The briefing room went silent. Captain Hayes slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the coffee cups rattle. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck as he pointed at the woman standing by the door. "Women don't belong in combat," he said, his voice rising with each word. "They're a liability, a distraction. They don't have what it takes to—" Lieutenant Sarah Chen didn't move. Her hands stayed at her sides, relaxed. Her expression remained calm, almost bored. She'd heard this speech before. Different man, same words, same anger masking the same fear. Before Hayes could finish his sentence, Colonel Martinez stood from his chair at the head of the table. His voice cut through the room like a blade. "Captain Hayes, I'm going to stop you right there. The lieutenant you're currently insulting has 61 confirmed kills across 3 deployments. She's logged more combat hours than anyone in this room, including me." The silence that followed was suffocating. "Before we continue, hit that subscribe button right now and stay with this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches." Sarah Chen was 28 years old, 5'5", 130 pounds, soaking wet. She had a quiet voice, a mild-to-side voice, a calm demeanor, and a face that made people assume she was someone's assistant. She wore her uniform like everyone else, kept her hair in a regulation bun, and never raised her voice. The men in her unit had spent the first 2 weeks trying to figure out why she was there at all. She didn't swagger, didn't boast, didn't try to prove anything to anyone. What they couldn't see was the scar tissue on her right shoulder from a Taliban bullet that had shattered bone and missed her heart by 3 centimeters. The way her left knee locked up in cold weather from shrapnel embedded too deep to remove safely. The calluses on her hands from 10,000 hours on the range. The way she calculated distance and wind speed without thinking. The way other people breathed. The nightmares that woke her at 0300 every morning, drenched in sweat, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. Captain Hayes was still standing, his jaw tight, his eyes locked on Colonel Martinez. His fists were clenched at his sides. "Sir, with all due respect, I don't care how many—" "Sit down, Captain," Martinez said. It wasn't a request. Hayes sat. But the fury in his eyes didn't fade. He looked at Sarah like she was something contaminating his space. Like her presence was a personal insult to everything he believed about the military, about combat, about what it meant to be a warrior. Sarah had been assigned to Forward Operating Base Keating 3 days ago. She was there to lead a joint operation with Afghan forces, tracking a high-value target who'd been ghosting coalition intelligence for 8 months. The target was a former Afghan army officer turned warlord, responsible for at least 17 attacks on NATO convoys. Capturing or killing him was the mission. But first, she had to survive her own team. The meeting continued. Maps were spread across the table. Intel photos passed around. Mission parameters discussed. Hayes participated like a professional, but every time Sarah spoke, his expression soured. Every suggestion she made was met with skepticism. Every tactical assessment she offered was questioned. When she pointed out a potential ambush point on the route, he dismissed it. When she recommended a different overwatch position, he argued for his own choice. When she outlined the expected engagement distances, he cut her off mid-sentence. The other men in the room watched this dance with varying degrees of discomfort. Some avoided eye contact. Others shifted in their seats. No one spoke up. After the briefing ended, Sarah walked back to her quarters. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded her of fire, of burning vehicles, of things she'd rather forget. The air smelled like diesel and dust. She could hear generators humming, voices calling out in Pashto beyond the wire, the distant thump of a helicopter coming in for landing. The base was alive with the controlled chaos of military operations in a combat zone. She didn't mind Hayes. Men like him were everywhere. They'd been at the academy, at sniper school, at every duty station she'd ever served. They saw her size and her gender and assumed she was weak, assumed she needed protecting, assumed she'd break under pressure, assumed she'd gotten her position through politics or diversity quotas rather than skill. They were always surprised when she didn't break, when she outshot them, when she stayed calm while they panicked, when she made the hard calls they couldn't make. The operation was scheduled for 0400 the next morning. 4 vehicles, 12 personnel, a 3-hour drive into hostile territory to set up an overwatch position on a compound where the target was supposedly meeting with Iranian contacts. Intelligence suggested weapons deals, coordination of future attacks, maybe even the presence of foreign advisors. Sarah would lead the sniper team. Hayes would command the security element. Colonel Martinez would coordinate from base. At 0330, Sarah was already in the armory checking her rifle. M110 semi-automatic sniper system, 7.62 millimeter, effective range out to 800 meters, though she'd made confirmed kills at twice that distance. She field stripped it, cleaned every component, reassembled it in under 4 minutes, loaded 5 magazines, 20 rounds each. She didn't believe in leaving anything to chance. Every piece of equipment was checked twice, every contingency planned for. Hayes walked in as she was finishing. He didn't say anything at first, just watched her work with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable in the dim fluorescent light. "You know what you're doing with that thing?" he finally asked. Sarah looked up. "Yes, sir." "Because if you freeze out there, if you hesitate for even a second, good men could die. This isn't some controlled exercise on a range back home." She met his eyes. "I won't freeze." "You say that now. But combat is different. It's not a training exercise. It's not a controlled environment. When bullets start flying, when everything goes to hell, that's when you find out who really belongs out there. That's when the pretenders get exposed." Sarah set the rifle down carefully. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm, with an edge of steel underneath. "Captain, I've been in 17 firefights. I've been shot twice. I've had a building collapse on me in Helmand Province. I've called medevac for my spotter while holding pressure on an artery with my bare hands, watching his blood pump between my fingers. I know what combat is, and I know what I'm doing." Hayes stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Not respect, not yet, but maybe the first crack in his certainty. Then he turned and walked out without another word. The convoy left at 0400 exactly. 4 vehicles moving through the dark, headlights off, night vision turning the world into shades of green and black. Sarah was in the second vehicle with her spotter, Corporal Williams, a kid from Ohio who'd been in country for 4 months and still jumped at loud noises. He was good at his job, but inexperienced, still learning to read the landscape, to spot threats before they materialized. "You ever work with Captain Hayes before?" Williams asked as they drove, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. "No. He's got a reputation. Good tactician, tough as hell. Lost 3 men in Kandahar last year to an IED. Carried 2 of them out himself while under fire. But he doesn't like taking orders from women. My buddy served with him before. Says Hayes thinks women make units weaker." "I'm not giving him orders," Sarah said. "I'm doing my job. He can do his." Williams nodded but didn't look convinced. "Just saying, ma'am. Watch your 6 with him." They reached the overwatch position 90 minutes later. A ridge overlooking the target compound, 1,500 meters out. Good line of sight. Minimal cover. If things went bad, they'd be exposed with limited options for withdrawal. Sarah set up her rifle, adjusted the bipod, and settled into position. The ground was cold and hard. The wind was steady from the northwest at about 8 knots. She pulled out her rangefinder, confirmed distances to multiple points, noted wind direction changes at different elevations. Through her scope, she could see the compound. Mud walls about 3 meters high, flat roof, 2 guards visible, both carrying AK-47s. One smoking a cigarette, the ember glowing orange in the pre-dawn darkness. The other pacing back and forth, nervous, scanning the perimeter every 30 seconds. Hayes and his team were positioned 300 meters east, ready to move in if the target was confirmed. The plan was simple. Observe, confirm identity, call in the strike team, extract. 4 hours maximum, in and out before the sun got too high. But plans never survived contact. At 6:20, 3 vehicles pulled up to the compound. Toyota Hilux trucks, the vehicle of choice for insurgents across Afghanistan. Men got out. Sarah counted 7 total, then 8, then 9. More than intelligence had predicted. Then she saw him. Tall, gray beard, scar across his left cheek visible even at this distance. The target, exactly where intel said he'd be. He moved with confidence, gesturing to the others, clearly in command. She keyed her radio. Viking 6, this is Overwatch. I have eyes on Falcon. Confirm. Repeat, I have eyes on Falcon. Hayes' voice came back, tight and controlled. Copy that, Overwatch. Hold position. Strike team is moving. ETA 3 minutes. But then everything went wrong. One of the guards looked up toward the ridge. Sarah saw him stiffen. Point. Shout something in Pashto. Suddenly the compound erupted. Men scrambled. Weapons appeared from inside the buildings. The target ran for the nearest vehicle. They made us, Sarah said into the radio. Target is moving. South exit. I have the shot. Negative, Hayes said immediately. Do not engage. Strike team is 30 seconds out. We take him alive, if possible. Sarah watched through her scope as the target reached the vehicle. 30 seconds might as well have been 30 minutes. He was going to disappear. Again. Intelligence would have to start over. The attacks would continue. More convoys hit. More soldiers killed. Sir, I have a clean shot. Wind is favorable. Range is 1,512 meters. I can end this right now. I said negative, Lieutenant. That's an order. Hold your fire. The target was climbing into the vehicle. The driver was starting the engine. She could see exhaust beginning to billow. In 5 seconds, he'd be gone. In 10 seconds, he'd be out of her range. In 15, he'd vanish into the mountains, and they'd spend another 6 months hunting ghosts while men died. Sarah made a choice. She adjusted for wind, compensated for the target's movement, calculated the slight upward angle, exhaled slowly, found the space between heartbeats, the place where the world stopped moving and everything became perfectly clear. Squeezed. The rifle cracked, the recoil pushed into her shoulder, familiar and brutal. Through the scope, she watched the target drop before he could close the door. Clean hit, center mass. He crumpled across the seat, lifeless. The radio exploded with voices. Hayes was shouting. Martinez was demanding a sit rep. The strike team was calling out positions. Overwatch, what the hell did you just do? Hayes' voice was furious. I gave you a direct order not to engage. Sarah was already scanning for secondary targets. 2 guards were raising weapons toward her position. Having spotted the muzzle flash, she fired twice. Both dropped. One jerked backward. The other crumpled forward. Target is neutralized, she said calmly into the radio. 2 hostiles down. Strike team, you're clear to move in. The next 10 minutes were chaos. The strike team swept the compound. 4 enemy combatants surrendered immediately, hands raised. 2 tried to run and were captured in a nearby orchard. Sarah provided overwatch, covering the team's advance, scanning for threats from surrounding buildings. She fired 3 more times, each shot precise, each one preventing a hostile from reaching cover or raising a weapon. One was trying to set up a PKM machine gun on the roof. Another was flanking from a grain storage building. The third was positioning himself in a window with an RPG. When the compound was secure and the team was extracting with the detainees, Hayes' voice came over the radio again. Lieutenant Chen, when we get back to base, you and I are going to have a conversation. Count on it. Sarah didn't respond. She broke down her rifle, packed her gear, and moved to the extraction point with Williams. The corporal looked at her with something like awe. Ma'am, that was the best shooting I've ever seen. She didn't acknowledge the compliment. Just kept moving. The convoy ride back was silent. Hayes didn't look at her, didn't speak to her, just stared out the window with his jaw clenched tight, the muscles in his face twitching. When they arrived at base, Colonel Martinez was waiting. His expression was unreadable. He looked at Hayes, then at Sarah, then back to Hayes. My office, both of you, now. They followed him inside. Martinez closed the door and sat behind his desk. The silence stretched for what felt like an hour. Sarah stood at attention. Hayes did the same, but she could feel the anger radiating off him. Captain Hayes, Martinez finally said, you want to tell me what happened out there? Hayes straightened. Sir, Lieutenant Chen disobeyed a direct order. I told her not to engage, and she fired anyway. That's insubordination. That's a violation of the chain of command. That's the reason we have the target in custody instead of chasing him through the mountains for another 6 months, Martinez interrupted. He pulled out a folder and opened it. Lieutenant Chen's shot was at 1,512 meters. Moving target, 8-knot crosswind. She made the call in under 3 seconds. The target is dead. 4 enemy combatants are in custody. 2 more neutralized. 0 friendly casualties, 0 civilian casualties. The mission is a complete success. Command is calling it a textbook operation. Hayes' face was red again. Sir, orders exist for a reason. If every soldier just decided when to follow them and when to ignore them, we'd have chaos. Discipline is what separates us from... Captain, I'm going to ask you a question, Martinez said, his voice calm but hard as iron. And I want an honest answer. If Lieutenant Chen had been a man, would you have trusted the shot? The silence was deafening. Hayes opened his mouth, closed it. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. His eyes flickered to Sarah, then back to Martinez. Martinez leaned forward. Lieutenant Chen has 61 confirmed kills now. 61. She's been recommended for the Silver Star. She survived situations that would have broken most of the men in this unit. She's been blown up, shot, buried under rubble, and she keeps showing up and doing the job. And you questioned her judgment because she doesn't fit your idea of what a soldier should look like. Hayes said nothing. But something in his posture changed. Not defeat, not agreement, but maybe the beginning of doubt about his own certainty. Martinez stood. You're dismissed, Captain. Think about what I said. Really think about it. Hayes left without looking at Sarah. The door closed behind him with a soft click. When the door closed, Martinez turned to her. His expression softened slightly. You did good work out there, Lieutenant. That shot saved lives. But next time, try not to give me a heart attack by ignoring orders on an open channel where half the base can hear it. Sarah almost smiled. Yes, sir. You know Hayes is going to make your life difficult. I know. Can you handle it? She thought about the bullet that had shattered her shoulder, the IED that had killed her best friend, the nights she couldn't sleep because the faces wouldn't fade, the men who'd told her she didn't belong, the ones who'd tried to break her, the ones who'd failed. Yes, sir. I can handle it. Martinez nodded. Good. Because we need you. Whether people like Hayes want to admit it or not, you're one of the best we have. That night, Sarah sat outside her quarters and cleaned her rifle under the stars. The wind was cold. The mountains were dark silhouettes against the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. She could hear voices from the mess hall, laughter, the ordinary sounds of soldiers trying to find moments of normalcy in an abnormal place. She thought about Hayes, about the anger in his eyes, the doubt, the fear masquerading as certainty. She didn't hate him. She understood him. He'd been taught that people like her didn't belong in his world. That combat was a place for men, and women were something to be protected, not relied upon. That the presence of women weakened units, distracted soldiers, compromised effectiveness. But the world was changing. Slowly, painfully, one shot at a time, one mission at a time, one mind changed at a time. 3 days later, Sarah was in the mess hall when Hayes walked in. He got his food, scanned the room, and then did something unexpected. He walked over to her table and sat down across from her. For a long moment, he didn't speak, just ate in silence. Finally, he looked up. That shot you made, 1,500 meters. Moving target. Yes, sir. I couldn't have made it. Neither could anyone else in my unit. Sarah didn't respond, just waited. I was wrong, Hayes said quietly. About you, maybe about a lot of things. She met his eyes, saw something different there now, not friendship, not even full acceptance, but respect, hard-earned, genuine. I appreciate that, sir. He nodded, stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, if I ever need a sniper watching my back, I hope it's you. Then he walked away. Sarah sat there for a moment, then finished her meal. Outside, the sun was setting again. Another day in the endless rotation of days. Another small victory in the long war of proving herself. But she'd take it. Strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need validation or approval or permission. The people who truly belong in the fight are the ones who prove it when everything is on the line. When the shot has to be made and there's no time for doubt, when the mission matters more than ego, when saving lives is more important than being right. That's not about gender. That's about courage. That's about competence. That's about being willing to do what needs to be done, regardless of who's watching or what they think. The real warriors don't need to prove they belong. They just show up. They do the work. They make the shots. And slowly, one person at a time, they change the minds of those who thought they had no place on the battlefield. That's how progress happens. Not with speeches or arguments, but with results that cannot be denied.